Thank you, Juha. It's also have been a pleasure to work here at the GF for 14 years. It's just an excellent organization with very highly professional colleagues at the GF Evaluation Office, the Secretariat, and the agencies. And evaluations like this, like the one I'm going to be presented, would not be possible if we didn't have this type of working relationship, high levels of professionalism in the GF. But I'll go right into the evaluation. Oops. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if it's not responding from here. I will just move over there and deliver it from there. That's the easiest thing to do.
Okay.
Oh. Very good. What's up with that?
Yeah. This is also advanced technology. Yeah.
Yeah. And we did practice several times and tested it, but okay, here we are now. Now, what did we intend to do with this evaluation? Basically, three things. We wanted to find out what was the impact GF was having in protecting biodiversity to supporting protected areas and protected area systems. We wanted to see what were the contributions of GF to the broader adoption or the transformational processes that we've been talking about, and what factors were basically at play here, both within the GF and outside of the GF support. And what are the conditions that enable or hinder biodiversity protection? We particularly looked at the human dimension. What is happening in terms of other uses of biodiversity or territories where biodiversity is located that would be taking place? Now, the evaluation was Juha mentioned basically was quite a broad evaluation, but we had several big challenges, but I would like to point out three challenges that we found, and one of them has to do with substantial gaps of information within GF support within GF databases, etc. There was a lot of uneven reporting in project documents, both at the beginning and at the end of the project, as to issues such as where were the protected areas, how many, from what time to what time did support take place, and gaps in the tracking tools as well. There was a limited, there were limited global time series on the global databases that we were using, and the time series on the global databases did not always match the information we had at the GF. So there were some incongruences there that we had to somehow deal with them. And there were difficulties in estimating counterfactuals. Basically, we had a lot of problem identifying what was a GF supported protected area and what was not a GF supported protected area. They seem to be quite basic, but once given the level of support of the GF, and the GF support happens at different scales, it's very difficult to really say this absolutely got no GF support from the GF when GF is working at the national level as well as in specific protected areas. So we also found a difficulty in assessing spillover effects of GF support, both in protected areas to the surrounding areas. So considering all of these challenges, we basically adopted a multidisciplinary mixed methods approach. And as Juha said, we basically went to every single method that has been developed, all sorts of databases, global databases, local databases, everything that we can get our hands off. And we work with a series of institutions that have the knowledge and the control of information, such as the University of Maryland. We work with NASA, with the Institute of Development Studies in Brighton, and there were about 5 or 6 major collaborating agencies that help us get this through. Our basic theory of change is simple. When it boils down to what we were doing, and this is something that sort of evolved during the evaluation itself, it was a learning process. Improved biodiversity or good biodiversity protection is about having good governance, and governance not just at the local level, but rather at a broader level as well, intersectoral factors, as well as law enforcement, effective management at the PA level, and community engagement, particularly at the local level. The way we went to assess this, the results of GF and the processes that GF supported was basically by looking at 3 big sets of information. One had to do with global databases, forest cover, wildlife abundance, and management effectiveness tracking tools. These actually are databases that are housed in WDPA and other institutions outside of the GF. GF contributes to some of this information, but this goes much beyond the GF. We looked at, there was a portfolio component when we looked at documents and material from within the GF, particularly when we were looking at issues having to do with the evolution of GF's approach, progress towards impact. And thirdly, we looked at case studies to look at GF contributions and contextual factors as well. Now, as you have mentioned, we used a whole range of tools. There was the team was highly multidisciplinary, very strong in the natural sciences and very strong in the social sciences as well. We used the latest and most sophisticated quantitative methodology that exists, quasi-experimental, propensity score matching, machine learning and machine thinking, very sophisticated algorithms. At the same time, we used mega databases that exist, say, on protected area remote sensing with the collaboration of the University of Maryland, and use on the other hand, on the qualitative side, qualitative comparative analysis, which is one of the most sophisticated methods that exist to deal with qualitative stuff. But I won't go into everything because there was a lot of materials. But the one thing that I should point out is that in the remote sensing, we used 30-meter pixels for the global analysis, but we also use 50-centimeter pixels for specific area analysis. So this is very, very precise. I mean, we're talking about, we were counting cows inside the protected areas. It was very, it's a bit of a joke, but indeed, it's possible to do this now. Now, there was a big component having to do with field visits. Basically, we visited 28 protected areas, 17 of which were GF and 11 of which were not GF, in 7 different countries in 3 continents. We were looking for protected areas that were considered successful and not successful, GF and not GF, as a way to mitigate any biases that might take place. And here's, for example, an area where the Secretariat and the agencies were extremely helpful to get at the right type of protected areas, provided the information in a very professional way, not seeking to sway us in one way or another. What did we find? Basically, GF has provided 2 protected areas that are land protected areas. We're excluding here anything that is underwater, marine underwater. $3.5 million to protected areas, and that's about we're talking about almost 1,300 protected areas, and almost 3 million square kilometers. this is a major chunk of area being protected with the support of GF, basically. So GF is a major player. I doubt that there's any other player that has provided this type of support to this many protected areas in the surface. But not only that, we did an analysis of the extent to which the area that GF the protected areas that GF supported had a global biodiversity value, and we used the latest indicators developed. They're still under development, but very recently developed, which is the key biological areas. And we found that 60%, close to 60% of what the areas that GF supports are in key biological areas. Now, this was not. The ability to identify key biodiversity areas did not exist, but GF actually hit on 60% of them without having this particular tool. In the future, they're using this tool, which is a very important decision. But on the rest of the protected areas, 31% of those protected areas met some kind of designation, international designation. So we have 90% of the protected areas really pointing at important global biodiversity values. The other 10% is more related to local designations of protected areas. So basically, it's in terms of the reach, it's big reach, is working in the right situations in the right places. You can see the distribution is quite broad throughout the world. Now, let's talk a little bit about the actual what's happening to the biophysical environment. We did this analysis of the remote sensing analysis, and what we found on all the protected areas for which we were able to identify, the 1,300 protected areas that we were able to identify, compare them to other protected areas that were in the same biome in the same country. So we were basically trying to get some soft control to not compare apples and oranges, but as much as possible, given the limitations we had, one with the other. GF protected areas had less than half of the forest lost than not GF supported protected areas. If we look at the buffer zones, also GF supported area buffer zones were doing better. This tells us that GF is moving in the right direction, but we cannot really talk about a strong attribution, given that there are many other factors involved under a condition like that. So we went deeper into a country where we had good information, and both as to what were GF-supported protected areas and what were not GF-supported protected areas, and good on-the-ground information. Mexico is one of the countries that has the best information of biodiversity. They have very, very robust institutions dealing with these issues, partly as a result of GF support as well. And we found that in GF-protected areas in general had 23% less forest loss than other protected areas. In the tropical and subtropical areas where you have the highest biodiversity, was higher, was 28% less. Only in mangroves, the GF support areas were losing more than the non-GF supported areas. And this is because these particular protected areas are under a lot of pressures from tourism and other factors. This is south with Mexico in the peninsula. But the key point thing basically is that this is really indicating that indeed GF is making a difference. At least in this particular case, GF is making a difference, and this can be attributed to GF, of course, in the collaboration with Mexico. Now, when we're talking about biodiversity protection, we're not just talking about protecting forest cover. We're talking about the animals as well. What is under the forest? So the best information available at the global level is the wildlife abundance databases that have been compiled. We were able to match 80 cases of a species with a GF protected areas. This is not a big number, so we cannot say much. We have to be careful what we can say. What we can say is that there was a clear tendency that projects that had species protections in their objectives did much better than projects that did not have species protections in their objectives, which tells us basically that indeed GF is making a difference at least in that regard. But again, we have to be careful how we interpret this data, because as you can see in this particular graph, and we're putting this graph there are problems of interpretation there. I mean, you cannot see that this rupture of the tendencies, and this rupture had to do with different technology in the gathering of information. The second part of the graph, they were using drones to count elephants, and that made a big difference. Now, let me go into the protected areas themselves. Basically, GF has contributed to stronger management capacities by supporting professional capacities, by improving infrastructure, providing sources of revenue, expanding protected areas, but also there's been a great progress in increased community engagement in protected areas, in things such as intelligence for law enforcement, ecosystem rehabilitation, cooperation, human-wildlife conflicts, and fire control and things of that sort. Now, this type of engagement has taken place largely because of the socioeconomic benefits that communities are deriving from GF engagement, and the protected areas, from the protected areas. And this actually, the finding of the evaluation is that this is key. This is not GF doing development. This is GF removing pressure sources to biodiversity. And when people's needs were not being met, we also found that those pressures were still present. And I'll go deeper into that in one of the recommendations. Now, the protected area system. GF worked with over 50 countries in supporting protected area systems. And again, very important work in terms of policy development, largely providing information for decision making and incorporating a broader stakeholders in the process of decision making, developing management approaches that were then applied to the full protected area, but also in financial and HR systems. And I want to emphasize the HR part. This would seem to be rather trivial, but no, it wasn't. We found that in the countries that we visited, actually, is through the development of robust HR systems that high-quality people were hired and retained within the protected areas. I mean, in several of the countries, the level of professionalism of protected area staff and protected area directors was in sharp contrast with other things that were going on in other parts of the country. So this is a major. I mean, the people that you get, the people that you support, make a huge difference. So let's get some.
That was set aside as wildlife protected area systems plan. It would have meant that the capacity of the institutions responsible would not have been built, and therefore the challenges of encroachment would have taken the upper hand. And probably maybe after every 10 years we'll be reviewing the wildlife protected area systems plan with a view to reducing its coverage resulting from poaching, among other things, rather from encroachment, among other things.
So basically we have a direct testimony, but I heard similar things in other countries. For example, in Mexico, I talked to all of the commissioners up to the point that up to about the beginning of the year that had been with CONAM, the National Commission of National Protected Areas, and they all basically gave very, very high credit to the GF for the accomplishments of protected area system and the very robust institution that Mexico has on protected areas. In fact, Mexico has been the country that has benefited the most from GF investment in protected areas, $190 million, but also is where the results are most apparent. That yes, it's a very, very, very important sort of success story for which GF should be very proud of because of the strong role that it had in this partnership with Mexico to do protection. But when we're talking about protected areas and protected area system, we found out that whenever you have support to both the protected area and the protected area system is where things actually happen and were sustainable, were more likely to be sustainable. Good work at the protected area system, at the protected area, without considering the national system that would be supporting what's happening at the protected area, fizzled out. And it was a pattern very, very clear that we had between those, even though we just had 7 countries, those that had the conditions did better consistently than those that did not have these conditions. So let's talk a little bit now about GF, where GF does well, basically. And this slide has a lot of implications for how GF should be doing its work. What is it that GF should be considering through its interventions? And this supports actually previous impact evaluations. This is very much in line with what we find in the South China Sea and what we found with the climate change evaluations that we brought to you in the last 3 or 4 years. Now, what we found is a long-term engagement, attention to financial sustainability, and linking skills, approaches, and stakeholders. When GF actually did these 3 things, directly working with government staff is when you develop capacity, continuity, and an adaptive management institutionalized in these institutions. And when we're talking about linking skills, approaches, and stakeholders, we're also talking about intersectoral factors. You cannot just stop and work at those things that are directly related with the biodiversity or directly related with the protected areas, but have to look at other things that are taking place: infrastructural development, mining development, agricultural development. But without losing sight that indeed the protected area is important as well. So doing the big thing without focusing on the protected area is not good either. We have to really work on both cases. Now, let me go into other recommendations. We are recommended for the GF continue to move in the direction that they've been moving in, getting the best information for selecting protected areas that are being supported by the GF, but do it using the latest geospatial technology. There's now an ability with the computers one can stack things up, basically, many databases, and really get information from many different criteria to make a decision. And this can be done in-house now. In fact, much of the work for our evaluation, we did it in-house as well. We have the capacity to do that in the office, and this in-house capacity can be developed within the Secretariat. I mentioned about the important role that GF had in bringing about economic benefits to local communities and how that was a critical factor in getting the commitment of communities to engage in protection. Well, we also found out that the benefits and costs of protection were distributed unequally among the local communities. And we found patterns in how this was happening. We looked into the literature trying to find the patterns. We didn't find much in the literature, but we have a very robust hypothesis that it's geographical location and social status what determines who gains or who loses in protection. Those that are close to the say tourist areas where economic activities are feasible, those that are within the protected area that benefit from investments from governments and other donors, as opposed to those that are outside of the protected area that just because they were on the other side of the line are not benefiting from investments, healthcare, etc. So there are some patterns that need to be taken care of. But these people outside of the protected area also use resources from the protected area, so they will continue to use them until other opportunities come about. So again, this is about protection, not about development, but equity basically helps everybody in situations like this. Now, and we are recommending for GF to create a program for learning more of what works under what conditions. Of course, this is happening already with STAP. STAP has begun to do some of this, but we are really, it's important for GF to take this much more seriously. There's a lot of knowledge to be derived, and GF is in an excellent position to be able to get all of this type of information and bring it in a way that very few other players can actually do it, as we were able to sort of demonstrate here in this evaluation. Now, a critical aspect, and that I really have to emphasize a lot, is this notion of the need to have coordinating mandates among sectors in order to fully address large-scale drivers. This is an area in the projects that we visited were projects that were, say, 5 years old. So we're not catching the latest work of the Secretariat, which definitely is going towards intersectoral things. So, basically what we found is that in the protected areas as such, GF was not doing that much work beyond the natural protected area system and beyond the protected areas. We did find that this continued to be big sources of pressures and stress, infrastructure, mining, tourist development, etc. And we also, in many of the protected areas, we also found that, again, in Mexico, we found 2 excellent cases where indeed attention had been given to dealing with the broader issues affecting development. One was the Sierra de Manantlan in the state of Jalisco, and the other one is the biodiversity Mesoamerican corridor in Mexico. Just to give you an idea, the biodiversity corridor in Mexico was able to get all the ministries dealing with the area. It's a very large area that they were working, and discuss their investment program considering biodiversity criteria. And it's about 40% of the investments going into that area at least consider biodiversity criteria while being made. And this is, of course, this doesn't yet have impact, but this is the type of steps that need to be supported and promoted. But again, you know, even though in the case of Mexico that has moved so far away, such big leaps in the last 20 years in terms of biodiversity protection, the protected areas and the national system, and these excellent examples that we see in different parts of Mexico, there are huge risks for sustainability. The current fiscal crisis of Mexico has led to cuts in many parts of government, but partly is the protected area system. About 1/3 of the staff has been laid off of the park wardens. Key directors of parks are being transferred and replaced by others that don't have the stature and the credibility to act as containing walls and interact with other ministries, and that actually places the biggest investment that GF has in protected areas, almost $200 million at risk, and a much higher investment made by Mexico as well. So this is, again, an opportunity for a dialogue between the GF and the Mexican government as to how GF can help overcome this period and basically prevent the loss of such magnificent accomplishment that was jointly done between GF and Mexico. And let me just finish with the last recommendation. That has to do basically with the use of mixed methods for monitoring as well. I mean, again, this evaluation is an example that indeed this type of methods can be used and reduce the weight and reporting to countries and to projects. I mean, the evaluation office has come up over and over with this statement that the reporting requirements are there's too much, incomplete, not very useful. But I should say that on this particular case, we're coming with very, very specific proposals as to what might be done. And this has been talked with the Secretariat at length, basically, and it seems that this is something that can move forward. But again, it's feasible to do it. It's feasible to establish the right type of partnerships in the countries, and to use the information that is appropriate for each scale that you're working, but not expect for everybody to give all the information that would eventually roll up in a magical way to give you few indicators up here in Washington. We know now that things don't work that way. But in any case, these are our findings, and I should say that the GF team was composed by Janine Garcia and Anupan Anand, and the UNDP team was composed by Alan Fox and Inela Weeks. Thank you very much.